Welcome to Driven, the Unscripted Success podcast, with your hosts, Mike Manino and Nareman Hamdan, bringing you insights and stories on achieving personal, professional, and financial success.
Hey guys, I'm Nareman Hamdan, and this is Driven Unscripted Success podcast. You can follow us on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. We've got a great guest on today. We have Matt Linder. Matt is the COO for First Children's Services. He originally started his career as a behavior analyst, and I'm very happy to have him on as a guest. He came as a referral from a previous guest. How's it going, Matt?
Oh, it's great, Nareman. Thanks for having me.
Good. So why don't we kick things off with, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and what your company does?
Sure. Yeah. So with First Children's Services, the company's pretty cool. You know, they look to provide supports both educationally and outside of education to individuals who need something extra. And a lot of times falls into that is the autism population. We have two private schools in New Jersey. We serve the multiply disabled population, the deaf plus, and the ERI population, that kind of emotional regulation. And these are all kids who didn't traditionally succeed in their general education settings. So they needed something extra. On the other side, what we do is we push into schools, we push into homes, and we bring learners into our clinics in both PA and New Jersey to provide them with those additional services to set the occasion for them to be successful without us in the future.
Sure. So is this basically a school or a tool that you add on for students that need a little bit of extra help?
Well, so it's both. So we have a couple schools if we can't meet their needs in the least restrictive environment. And my job as a COO is to take our state directors, their regional directors, and our leaders at these schools and align them in that educational empowerment initiative to try to say, hey, if the plant isn't growing in the environment it's in, you don't tell the plant to grow. It's not the plant's fault. You got to change the environment. And that's really what we try to do, is create the environment in which other people can succeed. And that's what I do at a higher level within the company, is create an environment in which our employees can succeed. Motivational systems, processes, kind of new ways of thinking to try to help them to get to that point where, they can then be successful without me setting that framework for them.
Absolutely. So when you think back, are there any moments that you'd say really changed the game for your career?
Yeah, there's kind of like some of those aha moments where you realize what you're supposed to be doing. And for a long time, I was, a behavior tech doing direct support work. And then I passed my boards and became a behavior analyst. And I was doing that work. And all along, I was getting pulled on this kind of leadership path. And, I had a boss who really kind of helped me to understand what I really like to do. So I got promoted to an executive clinical director role where I had some administrative responsibilities. I'm reviewing plans, I'm critiquing work, I'm providing corrective feedback to people who have been certified for a decade longer than me. And, I'm in my 20s in this role, and I didn't really know what I was doing. And I had kind of a chip on my shoulder because of my age. And I was just like, all right, it's sink or swim at this point. And I just kind of started to be able to apply behavior analytic principles to my administrative duties, my management, my coaching, my leadership. And that was kind of always just my crutch of saying, hey, I can always go back to these principles. They're lawful, they are predictable, and they're going to make sense to the people I'm working with because they're also familiar with them. That really kind of helped me get over that hump of people kind of looking at me with a fair amount of disdain for my quick upward mobility in the company. But there was that point at which I just was like, hey, I can affect so much more change in a positive way in these leadership positions than I can by working directly with the clients. And that's where I started to understand how addicted I am to the impact that I can have in a positive nature to a company, multiple companies, and just like hundreds, thousands of learners out there.
Sure. So how do you deal with taking risks? Is there a time when rolling the dice really worked out for you?
One of the bigger risks I took was, I was this COO for another company 6 years ago or so, and I resigned. Um,
Wow.
we were a growing company. Revenue was great. We were, up to around 50 million. When I started there, we were doing about a million a year. And when I left, we were doing about 50 million a year. And I kind of was, my path was divergent from the CEO at the company. And for a long time, I was able to affect a lot of positive change there. And that kind of diminished. So I said, you know what? I'm going to start my own thing. I'm going to go out and lean on my ability to understand what's going on in this world of ABA and special education. And I just up and resigned with no business, nothing, and said I'm going to build something from the ground up, and I'm going to do it my way. And I'm going to contact the values that are important to me. And I'm going to work with my clients in a way that makes sense to them. And it paid off. I loved it. The first year was, I mean, I'm sure you can remember the first year you started this, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, it's so clunky. Like I was just like, what am I doing? I had no
Yes.
idea on certain things. And I was like, this should just kind of work, right? And it didn't. So I had to bring in other people to help me and to, help me understand some things. And then I got a couple clients and I got comfortable with it. And then I was able to really move forward and get into a rhythm and developing my own systems. And then every year was more successful than the last. I gave myself 2 years. I said, I got 2 years of capital to be able to make this work. And if it doesn't, I'll go back into the workforce. It was about a year
Sure.
and a half in, and everything kind of clicked. But that was I learned so much over the last 6 years, and I helped a lot of people. But like understanding how things work and really like being able to understand what effect I can have and how I can do it. That was huge for me. Built a lot of wisdom and a lot of
Sure.
systems around it.
Yeah, I mean, it's empowering at the same time to see what you're truly capable of doing and producing and how you affect people with
Yeah.
just the moment you push yourself and believe in yourself, then that's the moment that you can actually make a difference, which is so cool. So everyone hits a bump in the road every now and then. Can you share a time that things did not pan out and how you got through it?
Oh, which bump? Yeah. um, yeah, I think there, man, I'll go back to that first year of the consultation agency. I was talking to a prospective client. And I'm like a very kind of like familial, relaxed type of person. I have my own voice of how I do things, which I think is important for any leader out there is to understand and identify your voice. However, when trying to sell to a new client, I took just a massive misstep. And, I found out that we had been talking for like a month or so, and I was going to go out there and meet with them and see their operation.
Sure.
And I found out we were connected. I knew somebody who used to work with them. And I was just like, oh, I just found out that you also know this person. And she was like, how do you know them? And I was like, oh yeah, it's we run in the same circles. We subscribe to some of the same curriculum as to how we go about this organizational behavior management consultation. And yeah, and he mentioned that he knew you too. And it just like derailed the whole project.
Oh boy.
I didn't understand the relationship from her perspective. I only understood it from his perspective. And I was just like, connections are good, right? All connections are good. If you're connected with somebody and I'm connected with somebody, that gives us a nice
Sure.
relational frame to which we can both lean on. I couldn't have been more wrong. It completely derailed the contract. I didn't close the deal. And I was just like, man, I had to look back on that and be like, what did I do? And really at the end of the day, I made too many assumptions and I
Sure.
didn't understand enough context and speak the language of her, of my listener in a way that made sense to her. It was a little bit
Yeah.
too familial. And that was a good reminder that, when you're forging relationships, when you're starting these things, you have to build them from the ground up. There are no shortcuts. You cannot say, I know this person and we're going to jump ahead in our relationship, because it can backfire just like it did.
Absolutely. Yeah. She didn't have the same warm and fuzzy relationship with that person as you did, clearly. Whoops.
Yeah.
Um, so, what's a skill or habit you think doesn't get enough credit for contributing to your success?
I have something that I started doing probably about like a decade ago, and it was a lot of me trying to find ways to be successful and try to punch above my weight class and my age. And I found that all too often we're forced with binary decisions. We have yes, no, true, false, right, wrong. And people talk about how they didn't have any other choices. It's a common kind of, I don't know, cop out excuse, so to speak. There's like, I didn't have a choice. I had to do this. And I think the message there is that there's always a choice, and there's always more choices than you think there are. So, I try to go through this, I call it non-binary decision making, where, if you're faced with two things, try to pick a third, try to pick a fourth, because then you can start, if you're on your own in developing these solutions, you can start to catalyze some self synergy. And that synergistic effect of finding something that's greater than the sum of its parts is one of the big reasons why we have social interaction at our jobs, is because somebody's going to say, hey, what if we go with blue? And somebody else is like, oh, what about a light blue? And you're like, oh, light blue would be great. What if it was a little shiny? And you're like, yes, shiny light blue. And together you're synergizing these components that are going to be so much better than if you're sitting in a closet by yourself, ruminating, trying to figure out the way to solve all the problems of the world, on your own.
True.
But there are methods that you can use to self-synergize. So, in that additional, even if it's a stupid idea, even if it makes no sense, there might be a fraction of it that helps move it along and helps you iterate on that solution. So, like I, I don't really take no very well for an answer. Like, hey, there's nothing else we can do, and I was like, I don't ever believe that. And sometimes there isn't. And once you get through everything and you dive deep in, you realize there's nothing else. There's nothing else we can do. We did the very best we could with what we had. But I find that kind of disbelief helps move things forward and allows me to uncover and find things that maybe would have been hidden otherwise.
Sure. And then, I mean, when you get a group of people that you can bounce ideas off one another, and then you'll have an idea, and then this other person just sees something a little more out of that idea. So, I mean, it gets exciting. I've been in those masterminding groups, and it's a great feeling. Just working together and coming up with all these ideas. You're like, oh my gosh, yes. Just like you were saying, the blue and the shiny and all of that. So
Well,
when
and then you
you're,
have a product, sorry to interrupt, but then you
no,
have a
no,
product that multiple people have contributed to, and they
sure.
each kind of put their thumbprint on it and said, hey, like there's a part of me in this thing, and they're connected to it. They have some buy-in. It's really, really great from like a leadership perspective to have them feel that way about what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's like you all came together and everybody contributed. Everybody was like-minded in getting this to find the solution for this problem. So, leading a team has its challenges. What's your leadership style, and can you give us an example of how it helped you through a tough spot?
Sure. Um, so my leadership style, I already kind of alluded to some of it. I'm very familial. I talk with the same voice when I'm leading that I talk to my family with, that I talk to my friends with. What changes is maybe some of my inflection, maybe some of how present my emotions are, and definitely my language. Because if I speak in the same language and vernacular that I use at home, at work, it doesn't sit quite right. People feel differently about it. But I always try to be authentic me in every situation. I've kind of identified who I am and how I am and what's important to me. And I let that run all the time. As far as leadership style, I'm very direct to the point where I'm just like, hey, this was a problem. I'll just say it. Boom, this is it. Hey, call somebody up. This is a problem. That's all there is to it. And I say, what can we do next time? And it's that next time piece. When I provide feedback, it's all next time feedback. I'm very deterministic in my thinking about what happened was the best we could have done with the information and resources that we had at hand. We can't go back in time. Let's not talk about how things were and how they should have been different. Let's talk about what's next time, and we'll add
Sure.
resources and tools to be able to get us there. So that's a big piece of how I do things for provision of feedback. An example. So I talked about my age before. I had somebody reporting to me who had been board certified as a behavior analyst for 9 years longer than me, and they had a good decade on me in life experience. And they were taking advantage of me very clearly. And I knew it. I knew it for a while. And I tried a lot of like supportive aspects. How can I do this? And like, I'll jump in here and I'll do this for you and this and this and that. And it finally got to a point where I sat down and I said, hey, we'll call her Sarah. Hey, Sarah. I think that we have a bit of a problem in how we understand each other. I think you're mistaking my support and generosity for weakness.
Sure.
I list off a couple examples. And I said, I want you to be successful. I want everybody I manage and lead to be successful. There's no reason I wouldn't want that. This is where we're at. This is what I've observed. I would like it to be different in the future. And she just like snapped in on it. She said, oh my God, you're totally right. And it was just one of those things of being extremely direct, yet
Sure.
compassionate in the approach to say, like, listen, like, I know how this might look. This is how it feels. Let's get through this together. And that's how I try to do everything. I try to be a support to the people I lead and instrumental and helpful in creating solutions for them.
Yeah, it's nice. And explaining like and some people do tend to take advantage of others. Some of them do it intentionally, some it just accidentally happens. And those are the ones that are more mature and are easier to approach and address it, where they're like, "Oh gosh, I'm sorry. What can we do?" They want to be better. So those situations I always find are great because it's a learning moment for both parties as opposed to being with somebody that's just kind of like a bully, if you will, and you're just not going to get anywhere.
Oh, and it's funny how much we don't understand about our own behavior,
Yeah,
especially like with kids, typically developing kids. You take like a 10-year-old. 10-year-olds mess around the house, knocks over like a vase or something like that. And mom or dad goes up and says, why'd you do that? The answer is always the same. I don't know.
right.
Because that's usually the truth. They don't understand all the contingencies and learning history that went into them engaging that behavior to knock over that vase. And adults aren't that much different. We don't understand enough about our own behavior and why we do things because we don't have the training, immersion, or motivation to do so.
Sure. That makes perfect sense. So, when you're building your dream team, what's the one trait you always look for and why?
That's an easy one. There is a term called discretionary effort. And it's a term that I think was coined by Dr. Aubrey Daniels. He's a great organizational behavior management wizard, or was late, great Dr. Aubrey Daniels. And essentially it means that above and beyond, there's this line at which the expectation rests for performance. And the people who go beyond that line with no motivational system or reason to do so beyond just their own performance and what they're getting out of it, those are the people with the highest likelihood of leadership quality. It's when you see that, they're going to be motivated by systems that you put in front of them. And then when you back it with a pay for performance system to add in positive reinforcement instead of just like, here's your salary, do the bare minimum to make it. Now I'll give you a reason to engage in discretionary effort and you'll get paid because of it. They drink those systems like water on a hot day. It really is just probably the biggest indicator. If I had to pick a secondary indicator for like leaders who function underneath me, it would just be complementary skills to my own.
Sure.
Find the people who do things well that you don't do well.
Absolutely. So how do you encourage your team to think outside the box and bring new ideas to the table?
I try to start by modeling it. I'm not afraid to look stupid in front of people. That's something that has gotten easier with more life experience. But to say, oh, what if we did this? And people are like, that's crazy. That's stupid. Whatever. I'm not afraid to say it. So I'm modeling that it's okay to fail with the provision or like the provision of different ideas. It's okay to propose things that do not work. So, that's where I start with that. The next thing I do is I reinforce it. When I see them doing those types of things, I'll do a lot of asking around their teams, because I have leaders, state directors who manage big teams, a couple hundred people on their own teams. And I say, I'll check in with them and I'll find out what's going on. I'll take the temperature of things. And when I find out kind of what they're doing that's unseen because they're modest people, they're humble, they're not telling me about all their achievements, I dig in and find them and I say, hey, I just found out that you're reaching out on weekends for somebody who's had a really difficult time with some home life stuff, to see if you can provide them any additional support or if they need to catch up. And I find these things out and they just melt my heart because it's just this like super compassionate, understanding support for people to be successful in a difficult environment. And I think that that's something that too many people are faced with, and you don't have that support at a certain time when it is absolutely pivotal to have it. So when I hear about those things, I reach out and I say, this is incredible. Do you know what you did for this person on a weekend? You gave them the support to be able to want to go to work on Monday, to be able to get through a tough time, and I'll find those things and I'll reinforce them. And it makes them want to do it more, whether they know it or not.
Sure. So this is a couple questions coming up here that I really like. So what's a day in your life look like and how do you juggle work and everything else?
Uh, I don't know. I love work. So I have a couple consultative clients. My primary job is the COO at First Children. And then I'm in a partnership for a software program that we're rolling out that just kind of went live this last week. And I love to be productive. I have maybe like a little bit of a productivity problem in that each day I like to be productive. I like to see that I was productive. So that's kind of my own hang up with that. So, but even on a Saturday or something like that, I'm like, all right, I got to get some yard work done. I got to do something around the house. I got to do this. I got to do that. But a day in my life is I get up and I do what you're not supposed to do. I look at all my messages first, try to help understand if there's anything that I need to do from a reactive standpoint first. When that is no, I use it's an Atlassian product called Trello. I have no financial gain from anybody using it, but it's a free tool and I use it to kind of structure and segment my leadership systems and teams to take notes. And from there, I drive a lot of priorities for the week. So every week on Monday, I'll go through and I'll reprioritize my top priorities for that week. And every week on Friday, I go through and understand which priorities I achieved and accomplished and which ones I did not,
Sure.
to try to keep myself honest. And if I didn't accomplish something, I note why. I say, I didn't do this because something else moved into a priority spot, or I chose to allocate my time to something else. Too many people kind of rest on the I don't have time situation.
Right.
And I don't
Mm,
believe it. I don't believe in time management. I believe in priority management. We all have 24 hours in a day, and we all choose based on a number of different factors on how we're
sure.
going to allocate our responses in that time. So, I have to be honest with myself if I don't accomplish something, what the real reason was and what my choice that led to it was.
Sure.
Uh, yeah. So I mean, but as far as like staying on track, like that's how I keep myself honest. I have a little bit of a compulsion for productivity, which helps. But at the end of the day, I love there's like if there's like a warming story about how our services help somebody, that's my kind of feedback. That's my oxygen for a week to
Sure.
understand what it was all worth.
Sure. I don't think that you have a problem with wanting to keep producing it and constantly doing things. I'm the same way, and it's I think I feel good when I'm being productive and knocking things out and problem solving, finding solutions for certain problems or, trying to put something back together that is complicated. It's kind of geeky stuff, but I enjoy it. So has there been a book, a podcast, or someone that's really changed your outlook or approach?
I'm embarrassed to say that I'm not a big podcast listener, uh,
That's fine.
but for books, there's really two books, and there's one line from one book that helps me to understand what's important. I'm a big fantasy nerd. I read all sorts of like magic and swords and dragons and stuff like that, and that's how I kind of check out from reality, and it's my escape. And there's a book by Brandon Sanderson. It's called The Way of Kings, and pure fantasy, nothing factual in this. And there's this question that keeps coming up. And if you haven't read the book, earmuffs. Spoiler alert. But it says, what's the most important step a man can take? And I think if you brought that up to the times, it would be, what's the most important step a person can take? And a lot of people will go ahead and they'll say the first step. And it's not the first step, it's the next step. Like, no matter what you're in, what is happening, what difficult times you're experiencing, what life has pushed onto you to keep you down, there's always a next step. And even if it's the first step down a new path, it is the next step from whatever you were doing before. And I think that helps to motivate me to know that there's always something else. There's always something to be done. You're never truly alone. You're never without resources. Hope has not completely eluded you. And that's kind of a helpful one for me, just from a motivational standpoint. The other book that is a leadership book that's not a leadership book is Malcolm Gladwell's David and Goliath. Are you familiar with Malcolm Gladwell? Most people,
Not really.
but
No.
check him out. This
Okay.
is a cool book. So the whole point of this book is like the little guy versus the big guy, and how does the little guy win? So when you are the underdog, you cannot play by the rules of the big players. We operate in a
Sure.
space at First Children where we have like what, 400 or 500 people at the company. They're a company with tens of thousands of employees, and I can't play by their games. I can't do things the way they do them because I'm not going to be successful. They already figured out how to play in that sandbox.
Sure.
I got to create my own rules, my own paradigms for us to be successful when we are the underdog. And that's really the piece that I think helps to motivate me. There's a couple like tenets for the legitimacy of leadership in there that are very cool. And he gives these historical accounts. A lot of them are from like wars of when the smaller side that should not have won prevailed. And it's a cool thing. It's that overcoming adversity and rewriting your own script to be successful.
Sure. That sounds like an interesting book. I just wrote that down. So I'll definitely be checking it out. So how do you tackle learning new things, especially stuff that's way outside of your comfort zone?
Uh, I'm not I'm not very good with like self-directed learning. I wouldn't make a great CEO. I think CEOs kind of have that insatiable desire to find new things and to learn new things, and they have a vision for what's next and what they want to get into. Those are the what people out there. I see myself as a how person, as an operator, and I say, all right, you tell me what you want to do. I'll tell you how we can make it happen. And it's how it's a good team works together that way. When when I look at when I learn new things, it's because there's a problem or it's because there's a goal. And somebody else has said, we need to figure this out. And I'm like, done. I will figure it out. I will find everything to solve this problem. So, it's probably not one of my more redeeming qualities that I'm so reactive in this sense, but I know that about myself. I'm not going to just say, you know what, tomorrow I want to learn more about particle physics. I'm going to start down that path because I'm just interested in it. If the nature of the universe was imploding and I had to understand more about particle physics to be able to continue to survive, I would learn.
Right.
Um, and I would stop at nothing to do so. So, I mean, like that's upside downside for me.
Well, and then it goes back to, what are your priorities, And is it, do I need to learn about particle physics? No. So it's not a priority. Uh, my brain works the same way. So and of course, like you said, if I needed to learn about it, I'd go into a rabbit hole
Yeah.
and extract everything out there and then some.
Yeah.
But am I just gonna be like, wake up and go, I wonder how particle physics works and how it all came together? No, not interested at all. Interested to hear it from somebody else for a split second or two, but that's probably about my attention span. So it
I'd agree
sounds,
with that. Yeah.
yeah. So it sounds like things are going well for you and your business. As you're looking towards the future, I'm wondering, how do you create passive income or have you invested in the past?
Yeah. Yeah. I got into investing about 10 years ago, which is, 10 years ago, I wish I would have started 10 years before that.
Sure.
But it's something that is a funny thing about money. And it's that you only need as much as you give yourself access to. We all think a lot of people think we need more and more and more and more. Take a paycheck for an employee. If you get them contributing to a 401k with an allocation from their paycheck from the start of their job, they never miss that money
Sure.
and encouraging them to engage in that. So, I mean, I've done a lot of the same in my previous position as COO. I was very, very well paid, well beyond probably what I should have been paid. And so I was determined to not lose that money or blow it on stupid stuff. And, my wife, her father is very into investing. So I learned a lot of things from him about different methods for investing in different sectors and really trying to predict the future, which is every investor, of what is going to be needed 10 years from now. So I got really into semiconductors, really into the tech sector. I'm very long on clean energy. That's something that I'll hold it forever. Because at some point, look at the current stuff going on right now. And, oil prices going all over the place. Like when that can
Sure.
fluctuate, clean energy being a little bit more consistent will be fantastic. Because I think it's that piece that it's going to be like for me, I think it's going to be like the currency of the future. But other passive income, the software company that I'm with as a partner, that's going to be good passive income. It'll take some work too as a managing partner, but
Sure.
it's going to help schools a lot. It's going to further my own values there too.
What are you doing with the software? With
It's a program that there's a lot of schools out there that have chronic out of school suspension problems, and out of school suspension will lead to, especially when you get into like those adolescent years, it'll lead to delinquent youth activities, potentially push people into organized gang activities, and puts them into that criminal system
sure.
because they're spending time out of an educational environment with supportive people to model what appropriate successful behavior looks like. So this is meant to rework that paradigm for the schools instead of just sending them out of school. Hey, we give them something that they're going to be able to contact through adaptive behavior in school and get them back into the educational environment with support. It's called the Compass Room,
Okay.
and it's pretty neat. It kind of self-directs everything internally, and I think it could really help. The pilot study we did was phenomenal. Great. It was like 90% reduction in out of school suspensions year over year. So that standpoint, like there's no reason why this can't be everywhere and
Sure.
help the schools with these problems.
Absolutely. So as we're wrapping up our interview, what exciting plans or initiatives do you have in the works for the next 6 to 12 months? But you just mentioned your software. So when
Uh,
do you plan on rolling that out?
that's out. That's live. We just got it onto our servers last week. So the developers worked really hard with us on it. A lot of back and forth, but so that's going to be a huge initiative is getting that out to a select few schools to start and have them help us to provide us with feedback on how this could work better, make some tweaks, and then go a little bit bigger with it. We got a lot of interest already just from conversations we've had. Um, at First Children, I really want to continue to implement these organizational behavior management systems, these behavior analytic driven programs to be able to help to sustain themselves and lift everybody up. You know, the employee experience, I've already changed a lot around the employee experience, and we've impacted retention significantly. I'm talking like 35% decrease in turnover from this last 5 months to the 5 months of the previous year before I put in place some of these things. And that for me is like, people want to stick around. People want to go to work. Like, that feels really good. I want to find the next step there. How can we help people find what they really truly connect to in this world, even if it's not at this company? I love like that. There's something special about that when you feel like somebody is able to fulfill their purpose on this planet. I don't know. It just gets me. And,
Yeah.
people will reach out years down the line. They're like, Matt, we talked, and because of this, I'm doing this today, and I never would have been doing this without you. And it's just like, it's all I need to keep going on this track.
Sure.
Even people I fired in the past will reach out and say, I didn't realize how much you helped me through that moment. And I'm eternally grateful for it. So I want to keep furthering that. I want to see more people thinking about people as people,
Sure.
as opposed to just workers or cogs in a wheel.
Yeah, absolutely. Make it a little more familiar, a little more personal. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to come on, and I really enjoyed learning about what you have been doing and what you're planning on continuing to do with helping these kids and your staff. If anyone wants to get a hold of you, how does one find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. There's a couple of us out there. You could go to thedesiredeffect.com. That's my website. I'd say that's
Right.
probably it. You can go on thebehavioraltoolbox.com. That you'll be able to find me on too. I don't know. You'll find me. I'm sure
They'll find
we'll
you.
talk if we need to talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks again, guys, for tuning in. And if anyone wants to get a hold of Matt and learn more about what he's doing, you can find him on LinkedIn or go right to his website. Thanks. See you guys next time.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Driven, the Unscripted Success Podcast. Want to share your story? Apply to be a guest at drivensuccesspodcast.com/guest.